I'm ready.
All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is. And right here, right now, we actually welcome back the one and only Grammy Award nominated, multi-platinum, the one and only producer, Baby Paul, right here live on the line, man. How are you doing this evening?
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Peace and blessings, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, man, it is great to have you back on, man. You know what I mean? Yourself and your partner, Super MC, man, we're dropping bombs like Hiroshima on the listeners, man. And I gotta say, it's definitely a blessing to have you back on the radio station airwaves with us this evening.
That's what's up. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it, man. And sorry if we got a little behind schedule tonight.
Oh, man, it is all good. It's completely understandable, man. I know you're a busy individual, man. So, hey, man, it's all good. I'm just glad you're here with us this evening.
Appreciate it. As a matter of fact, probably before we go off the air, I probably could send you a treat that you can bless the airways with. That's off the new Dog Die 2 album got tonight.
Hey, man, if you want to, most definitely, brother. We can definitely make that happen.
For sure. But I just want to tell the listeners, thank you for all the support. Thank you for supporting Crossroads, Super MC, and Baby Paul. You know, if you ain't got all our music that's out there, go get it. You know, we got 2 EPs out, The Road Less Traveled, you know what I'm saying? And, of course, X Amount, you know, just classic hip-hop representing Queens and Detroit to the fullest, you know?
And also as well, man, because I know we are, as you already know during our interview previously, I asked you how you got into the music industry and whatnot, man. So I know we already covered that line of work actually in the first interview. But I want to take you back to the year 1998, man, because like we said in the first interview, your production records go way back, man. More than 1 or 2 interviews could probably cover, man. So we're gonna start it off in 1990. You know what I mean? Like in 1998. Where you actually had the opportunity to work with Hussein Fatal of Tupac's Outlaws, man, on his album In the Line of Fire, man. How did yourself and Fatal get connected?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people don't tend to ask me. First off, I want to say rest in peace to Fatal Hussein, you know what I'm saying, legendary hip-hop artist representing New Jersey. Salute to the Outlaws, you know what I'm saying. Rest in peace, of course, to Tupac. I got the opportunity to actually meet Fatal and work with him through his manager at the time, who happened to also be the manager of the group, The Artifacts, out of New Jersey. And I had produced The Ultimate for Artifacts and a couple other records that was on their first album back then, released by Beat Atlantic Records. So the manager, I believe his name is Courtney, he was like, yo, I got another client I'm working with. I'd love to see if you might want to do some music for him. And I said, cool. You never told me who. You know what I'm saying? He just was like, I got another client. So one day, you know, like, he brought him to the studio. I had already been in a session doing some other work, and I played a couple joints that he chose, and he loved it. And then we got to work, you know, like in a matter of no time, you know what I mean? And we ended up doing a couple of records. 2 of them, I believe, made the In the Line of Fire album of Relativity Records. And one of them I actually had to remix because it was a sample clearance issue. I had used an Isaac Hayes sample of a guitar in one of the records. And the label was just like hesitant to clear the sample because of their budget. So I went in and replayed the record, you know, kept the whole drum sequence, the bass, the foundation of the production of the music was kept. I just rearranged the guitar parts on there to keep that same feel, but not necessarily have to use a sample, and it made the album.
And I gotta say as well, man, like, obviously, like, were you a fan of Tupac actually before actually going into this recording session? And of course, what was it like actually just working with an individual that actually just, like, you know, was so close with Tupac?
That's a good question because, again, when I first was introduced to him, I didn't know his affiliation with Tupac per se. It wasn't until after doing the music and knowing, you know, he was signed to Relativity and knowing that it was an Outlaws affiliation that I was like, okay, this is dope. You know what I'm saying? I never got to meet Tupac, you know, unfortunately, you know, may he rest in peace. And I met a few of the Outlaws at different points in time, just circulating the music industry. So when I got to work with Fatal, it was like, okay, he's part of that camp. And I remember he had an infamous verse on Hail Mary off of the Machiavelli album. So it was like, oh, as soon as we started rapping, I recognized his voice. Because I didn't match the face with the voice right away because he wasn't in a lot of visuals at that time. You know, if you remember, he wasn't even really in a lot of pop videos up until the time they did the Machiavelli project and they had to Hit 'Em Up. And I think he had a verse on the Hit 'Em Up record too. So that's when I was able to put the face with the voice. I worked with him, Pac was already gone. Pac passed in '96, but it was a great opportunity still.
And also as well, man, the next year in 1999, you actually had the opportunity to work on the Next Friday soundtrack on the song "Living It Up." I was wondering if you could shed some light on that project, and of course, how did that opportunity come to be for you, just working on, Next Friday?
Absolutely. Shout out to Farrell Mark. You know what I'm saying? Queen's representation right there. You know what I'm saying? He actually has a rock project he's doing right now under the group name 13, so y'all look out for that. So Farrell and I, we knew each other from the hood, from Queens. You know what I'm saying? And we always talked about working together. We always, kept in touch with degrees of separation. And then, of course, once he was signed to Raucus and I was signed to Raucus as well as part of the Beatminerz, we did an album called Racial Impact on Raucus Records. And when I worked with Farrell, I was actually producing that song that ended up on the Next Friday soundtrack for the Internal Affairs album that Raucus was doing for Farrell. But once they narrowed down the track listing and the song placements for the album, they decided that the creative direction of the music I did didn't fit the direction of the album, but they still wanted to find a place for it. So at the time, Raucus Records was distributed by Priority Records, owned by Brian Turner, who was, responsible for the success of Ice Cube and NWA. So they got to working on that soundtrack. So what Raucus did, since they're under the same distribution, they placed my song on the soundtrack and in the film. So if you ever watch Next Friday, my song is in the scene where Day-Day's walking into the crib when Ice Cube first comes to the house, and he's talking to the older Asian lady, and she's talking about she got some weed for him. You know what I'm saying? Before they walk into the house, and that scene, and like within the first 20 minutes or half hour of the movie, my song's playing for a few minutes of the movie, and I own 50% of the publishing on that record, so I still get paid to this day every time y'all watch Next Friday on TV.
Hey, and I gotta say, I actually watched that a few days ago on TV as well, man. So I'm glad I helped contribute to putting some food on your plate.
Absolutely, absolutely, and shout out to Raucus for the opportunity, because I got a gold album for that soundtrack, so I got a song on the soundtrack and in the movie, so it was a good look.
And I gotta say as well, man, that movie was absolutely phenomenal, man. Like, a lot of people like they like the original one. And I'm not hating on the first one, because I love the first one, but the second one was always my favorite as well, man. I don't know, I just find the production quality was a little bit better on the second flick.
It was the introduction to Mike Epps. I believe that was his first big movie, to be honest. Not only that, you had other characters in there like Pinky, who's infamous for some of the lines he said in that movie. You know what I'm saying? The actor who played Pinky, he's still around. He's a legend. Just the whole storyline was dope. But you had Sticky Fingers in there, you know what I'm saying, acting crazy. So I love Next Friday. I thought it was a great second installment of the whole Friday series. You know what I'm saying? So it was a blessing to have an opportunity to be a part of that movie. And actually, when I saw it in the theater and I actually was able to read my name on the end credits with all the songs that was in the movie, it was a good feeling.
And also as well, man, in 2001, you actually had the opportunity to produce the song Destroy and Rebuild on Nas's Stillmatic album. I was wondering, how did yourself and Nas actually get connected? And of course, what was it like just being in the studio with a fellow New York legend?
Man, shout out to Nas, man. He's doing great these days. I love the last two albums he just put out. Salute to Hit Boy. So I would definitely say that Stillmatic was out in a mega place for Nas' career, for all those that know, because, it was somewhat the answer to his first album. Of course, musically and lyrically, it was completely different, but what I loved about Stillmatic was that it was a time when some people questioned his validity and consistency as a hip-hop artist in music, and of course, the whole battle between him and Jay-Z was happening. So it was a lot of tension in New York at that time, and I can honestly say my experience in the studio was dope with Nas, but it was still a tense time because he was under a lot of pressure with that album. Either I can't remember if it came out. It might have came out by the time I worked on the album, but we hit the studio. We actually recorded that record in Times Square, New York, at a studio called Right Track Studios, right in Times Square, and I had placed the record by submitting music to the A&R at the time, Lenny Nicholson, who was the A&R at Sony Records at that time, and he's also responsible for A. Marie's music, and he's a business partner to A. Marie, for those who don't know. But at that time, he was the A&R, and I placed the record through him. And then when I got the call, I think Nas had recorded some of the vocals for my record in the Bahamas, because I think he had took some time away from the States while he was recording some of the music for that album, just to woosah, calm his mind, ease some stress, and get focused. And then when he came back to New York to finish the album, that's when all the producers were getting called to get in the studio with him. So when I first met with Nas in the studio in Times Square, some of the vocals was already laid, but it wasn't done. So he played what he had and asked for my feedback. And I was like, okay, this is dope. I have an ego. I'm a producer. I'm looking for a hit record. I want to have a single, possibly to sell the album and make my name, be a force on the album. But when I realized it was somewhat of a diss record, I was like, okay, let me see how I can make this great. So, as I listened to the vocals, and he went and cut the rest of his vocals in the studio with me, and then when he was doing the outro, so the outro that everyone hears to this day is different than the actual outro he started with. He was a little bit more aggressive. He was naming names. He was a little angry and frustrated when he was talking at the end of the record. And I made a suggestion. I said, instead of doing that, why don't you kind of like focus on, laying down your position, but still let people know that, you're trying to move on in a peaceful way. You know what I'm saying? So that's when he came back and approached it differently at the end. And that's the version that came out. And all I remember is his brother Jungle was in the studio, and he said, yo, when this song is done, we're taking it straight to the hood, meaning Queensbridge. We wanted to take it straight to the street dudes in Queensbridge and play it for them so they could hear it before the album came out. So, that was an amazing memory for me as far as working on Destroy and Rebuild for Stillmatic.
And I have to ask as well, as pertaining to that, when you actually suggested he kind of changed that up a little bit, was he hesitant at first, or did he actually kind of sit back and was like, you know what, you don't call you right?
One thing I like about Nas is, he's a real creative. Like, when he's working with people in the studio, he's completely humble and open to ideas. And if it makes sense, he'll do it. If he's not feeling it, he'll also voice his opinion, like, I'm not really feeling that idea. I don't think that's going to work. And the interesting thing is, he's a fellow Virgo like me. Now, his birthday's actually coming up the 14th. Mine is the 17th. You know what I'm saying? So we're kind of like kindred spirits. The only difference is I'm a little older than him. You know what I mean? But I respect his success. I respect his talent. I'm blessed to say that I'm a part of his career and one of the greatest hip-hop albums he ever made.
And also, as well, you were actually a member of the hip-hop production crew, the Beatminerz. I was wondering, how did you actually get connected with the other members? And, of course, what's the story behind you actually joining that legendary producing crew?
Okay, indeed. Shout out to Bpzy, Mr. Walt, Beatminerz, Duck Down, Boot Camp, the whole crew, you know what I'm saying? It started out because me and Mr. Walt, who's Bpzy's brother, we were good friends. I used to go to the record store in Jamaica, Queens, that he actually ran as a manager, called a Music Factory in Jamaica, Queens, when we were younger. And I used to go in there to buy my vinyl, keep up with my latest hip-hop music, buy cassettes and vinyl, stuff like that. And around the time I was actually interning in Long Island City, to learn how to really learn the ropes as far as recording studio etiquette and techniques and engineering and production, I had what you call an advanced cassette copy of Kool G Rap's Wanted Dead or Alive album after it was recorded in the studio, right? So one of the days I was in the Music Factory in Queens up in the store, I was telling Walt, yo, I got the G Rap album. He's like, what? And he said, how you get that? I said, bro, I'll be in the studio with these guys, man. And he was amazed by that. So that's how we started really building our bond, having a mutual passion for the music. You know what I'm saying? And then eventually, Walt invited me to Bushwick, Brooklyn, where, his family owns their house to this day. And that's how I met Evil D. You know what I'm saying? And in the scope of just like building a friendship with them, right around the time Evil D was doing the demos for the first Black Moon single, Who Got the Props, which was developed with the help of DJ Chuck Chillout. You know what I'm saying? We all got really cool, so I started like demoing beats with Walt in the house in Bushwick, and that's kind of organically how the Beatminerz formed. It was more of a friendship, and that's how we all became affiliated with one another. We all individually produced records for a lot of the boot camp clicks records and albums, but we also did collective collaboration on certain records. For example, Bucktown and I Got You Open, the remix. That was like a collective collaboration on the production. But then anytime you looked at the albums and you saw our individual names, that meant that we individually produced those records on those albums.
And also as well, July 31st of '01, you guys, the Beatminerz actually released the phenomenal album titled Brace for Impact. And one thing I have to ask, man, because in my personal opinion, you have so many phenomenal joints actually on that record. I was wondering, is it still available to actually be streamed or purchased today? Because I gotta say, that album was a masterpiece.
Thank you. That's a good question. Like, I know Raucous Records put it out initially back then. I don't know if Raucous has released all of their catalog and streaming platforms. That's something to research. But I do know they do have vinyl that circulates, especially on the internet. So I think the best thing to do for the real hip hop heads that's listening to the sound of my voice on this show is, if you're looking for that Brace for Impact, I would suggest looking for like a vinyl version of it. So between the States and Europe and Japan, I'm sure there's some collectibles out there where you can get your hands on it. You know what I mean? Because I know the vinyl presses is limited. And again, I don't know if Raucous Records actually does all of their catalog and streaming platforms, but I would say look for it as Brace for Impact, the Beatminerz, Raucous Records, and in Apple Music or Spotify, see if it's there. I'm not even sure if it's there, but if it is, I appreciate the support. But definitely look for the vinyl version, because the real DJs appreciate the vinyl.
And also as well, while we're on the topic of Brace for Impact, you guys actually did a song with Naughty by Nature titled Thug Love. I was wondering if you can tell us the story of that recording session, and of course, what was one of the most memorable moments you shared with that legendary New Jersey trio?
Yeah, shout out to Trent, shout out to Naughty Van Rod, shout out to KG, who actually, I haven't seen KG in years, but we actually both produced music on AG's album, which we'll get into later. But I think that beat, I came up with the beat for that record, and it ended up happening to be the same sample that I think Coogee Rap used on his album that he did with Raucous, but they were released at different points in time. And when we put the beat together for Naughty, we went out to Jersey and recorded in the studio with them, and it was a good vibe. I think Tretch did the hook, and then they both traded off verses, Tretch and Naughty. Tretch and Vinny traded verses on that. And, it was a good vibe, man. We definitely, because we built a relationship with Naughty after Mr. Walt produced some music for R&B group Neck. If you remember, I think the first Next project was executive produced by KG of Naughty by Nature, because he had his own label and he was putting out other artists. So he was responsible for breaking the R&B group Janae as well. So when he was working with Next, Walt ended up doing a track for their project. So that's how the relationship with Naughty was built. From then. So when we actually got to deal with Raucous to our album, we reached out and had them contribute to the album. So it was a good look.
And also, so we actually have a user-submitted question just based upon Thug Love. Canny Bus NJ, NJ actually on YouTube wants to know, on the song Thug Love, whose idea was it to actually add that chant vocal bit to the classic cha-cha-cha sample? Was it yourself or was it Mr. Walt? And of course, what made you guys decide to implement that onto that legendary song?
Okay, so are you talking about the hook itself that Tretch did, or are you talking about the sample, the beat?
Like the Tretch beat, Tretch's and the beat, sorry.
Right. But I know Tretch came up with the hook, and he was referencing, the interesting thing is he was referencing different gangs, you know what I'm saying? He was shouting out Disciples, shouting out, the Bloods, Crips, you know what I mean, and trying to just unify the gang community, you know what I'm saying, and show love and support and respect to dudes out there in the streets. And if I'm not mistaken, we took a vocal sample from I think another Naughty record in the hook. It was like, "To all my people up top," you know what I'm saying? And it came out really dope. It's been some years, man. I haven't heard that record in a while. I'm just trying to recall how we put that song together. But shout out to everybody that's tuned in, and shout out to the homie on YouTube that had that good question.
And also as well, man, in 2005, you actually released the project titled Underground Veteran 10 Years in the Making. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about that amazing project, and of course, where can we actually snag ourselves a copy of that amazing project today?
Wow, that's dope, man, that you actually remember that. Shout out to Fat Beats Distribution. Shout out to DJ Clips. He was the man behind that. He showed me a lot of love and respect for my work over the years. So we did that project where I material, like a couple of like original songs that got leaked, like lost tape, so to speak, and a couple of remixes. And then I actually did a revised version of that project with more bonus material, like about 5 years later, in like 2010, and I put that out with Coast to Coast mixtapes. So I believe the Fat Beats version should be available under Fat Beats distribution. And so look that up online, Fat Beats distribution, and just look up Baby Boy Underground Veteran, the original version. And then the second release is available on coasttocoastmixtapes.com, where it's called Underground Veteran 1.5, which is like a revised version of what I did with Fat Beats, but with more material, more remixes, unreleased stuff that I produced over the years that people may or may not know about, including remixes I did for D'Angelo, John Legend, Consequence, a song I did with Kanye West before he broke on his first album with Rockefeller Records, when he was completely independent underground, putting out like mixtapes and just streaming music before Through the Wire came out. I did a song with him and Consequence called Turn Yourself In. So yeah, I've been around putting in work, man. Some of it, people know and love. Some of it they might have missed, but it's out there.
And I gotta say, man, like we actually said at the beginning of the interview, man, you have so much amazing production credits that sometimes when putting together an interview, you don't even know what to ask because there's just so much amazing content.
Can I tell you something? You're asking the right questions. I haven't answered questions like this in a while, specifically about the music. Of course, people ask questions about me and my production, but they may not ask about certain records, and especially like B-sides and underground joints that, you got to really follow the work to be familiar with.
And in my personal opinion as well, I think a lot of people, they look at the years and they probably just automatically assume that some people don't remember, but me personally, if I was in the studio with people like Naughty by Nature or Nas or something like that, I don't know how anybody could really forget that unless you got hit upside the head really hard and got some really bad amnesia.
Yeah, you're right. Nah, I really, really appreciate it because, when you've been in this business for a certain amount of time, now you're dealing with a younger generation of listeners. So some material that might have came out and came and went might go over some people's heads. And the music industry is always based on what you're doing now to stay current. They treat you like you're only as good as your last record. So I appreciate the nostalgic conversation.
And also as well, man, tonight at midnight. Tonight at midnight, an actual amazing album that you actually produce is actually going to be released worldwide, and it's actually AZ's record, Do or Die. I was wondering, tonight at midnight, what can our listeners actually expect when this phenomenal record drops? And of course, where can we actually snag ourselves a copy come 12:01 a.m.?
Man, it's available on streaming platforms everywhere. I believe if AZ's smart, he'd be doing a vinyl version for this album because it deserves it. But yeah, Do or Die 2 will be out tonight. Long awaited hip-hop album by the legend AZ. I call it my Grammy family because we earned a Grammy nomination together when I produced on the Motown release, Adriatic, the song The Essence with him and Nas. So he'll always be considered my Grammy family. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I produced 2 records on there. One is called Keep It Real, and you'll hear some classic hip-hop, like chop samples, some hard drums that you may or may not recognize. It's one of those records where, as a DJ in hip-hop, you're going to listen and be like, ooh, I want to put all these samples in my head together and pull out where he got it from. I did that one for the culture. You know what I'm saying? And then the other record I produced is called Never Enough, and it's featuring Rick Ross, and it's featuring a phenomenal vocalist named Myra Kay. You know what I'm saying? She's from Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? She's a Jewish girl from Brooklyn with the talent level of like a Amy Winehouse, if you can imagine that. Like soulful jazz over a really like unique alternative soulful track that I produced, and it's different, it's musical, but it's still street. And Rick Ross embodied it. You know what I mean? So I'm blessed to say that I did some solid contributions to this album.
And I gotta say, me personally, I know anything that you touch production-wise is absolutely phenomenal. I know AZ's a legend, man, so I'm definitely looking forward to snagging my copy in pretty much less than 2 hours.
Appreciate it, man, definitely. And I want to shout out all the other contributing producers to the album who did a really amazing job. There's still some records I haven't even heard, so I'm going to be tuning in tonight as a fan myself. I've heard maybe 4 songs outside of my own work on there. I know that Buck Wild did a track on there. He's another legend. I think his track is featuring Dave East. Of course, the KG that I mentioned earlier, produced track, is out already because that was one of the single releases called The Wheel featuring Jaheim. I think Bink produced a record on there that AZ just dropped a video tonight on World Star. You know what I'm saying? It's called Just For You. Really dope. Pete Rock, legendary, you know what I'm saying? One of my peers did a joint on there that's really, really dope. I think it's called Check It Out. And then everything else I haven't heard. So I'm looking forward to it. I know Rockwilder did some work on there. Who else worked on there? Trying to remember. I mentioned Bink, Pete Rock, Buck Wild, KG, myself. Man, just tune in, man. More treats. I'm looking forward to hearing it myself.
And when you actually brought up Pete Rock a few minutes ago, man, I actually, I think I read on his Instagram today that he's actually going to be honored actually at the 2021 BET Hip Hop Awards. So I just want to give a shout out to him. If he listens or if he doesn't at the same time, just want to show him some love.
That's really dope. It's well deserved. Pete Rock is one of my hip hop heroes. He's a legend. I still listen to his music to this day. There's not a year that goes by I'm not listening to something Pete Rock did. You know, he's just one of those greats.
And also, man, aside from Do or Die, I have to ask, man, what is next for yourself, Baby Paul, man? Is there any new projects, anything you got currently in the works that you want to talk about or promote?
Of course. It don't stop. Once again, shout out to my Detroit Cody, Super MC. We got another Crossroads project coming out, tentatively titled Hiatus. But we've been on a little time out while we living life and doing other things. But when we get back together, it's going to be this grand, incredible rap music. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the female legend, legacy artist, Moni Love, who's been a friend of mine and one of my peers in many years. I'm actually co-executive producer of her new project. We have a song with Sky Zoo that's called Divine. That's going to be coming out in October that I produced. So look out for that. What else? Of course, Dre Banks, you know what I'm saying? I'm overseeing his project, which is called Bronco. I produced a record featuring Trina that's out right now called Boyfriend, Girlfriend. I got some treats, man. I got some treats. You know, just stay tuned on my Instagram and you get updated at all times on a monthly basis of what I'm up to.
And also as well, man, as you already know, this is the time in the interview, man, that I give a chance for the individual that slides into the radio station airwaves. It's a chance to give, like, shout-outs to whoever they want to give shout-outs to. But most of all, man, your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated on everything Grammy Award nominated, the one and only multi-platinum, Baby Paul.
Thank you very much for everybody. Thank you to yourself for having me. I honestly decided to condense my social media presence, to be honest. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Snapchat. I'm not on Twitter. I decided to just stick with Instagram. So my Instagram page is Instagram.com/BabyPaulBPZ. That's BabyPaulBPZ. Instagram.com/BabyPaulBPZ. You can find me right there.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, man, thank you so much yet again for actually giving us a bit of your time, man. It's always an honor when a legendary individual like yourself takes over my radio station airways, man. Thank you so much for sharing some of your legendary history. And again, just like I told you during the first interview, thank you so much for just helping to give birth to so many legendary projects, because without the producer, realistically, where would the music be? Because at the end of the day, if there's no producer, how are you going to have that sound?
You're right. It goes hand in hand. You know, salute to the lyricists and the legends that deliver the vocals that inspire and touch the world. But the creative energy of the music, you know, is the driving force to those vocals. So, you know, it's much appreciated, the acknowledgement. You know, salute to you for curating, you know, your platform for people like myself and others to be recognized and heard and get it updated on. You know what I'm saying? So it's very much needed. So keep doing your thing.
Hey man, I ain't gonna stop until the wheels fall off. And when they do fall off, I'm gonna get my ass out and put them back on and keep on trucking.
Say less, indeed, man. Thank you, man. God bless and good night to everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
You are most certainly welcome, man. Have yourself a wonderful night.
Thank you, man. Blessings to everybody. Make sure y'all check out that Do or Die 2 out tonight.
Most definitely. Get it, or you most definitely will regret it.
Yes, sir. Peace.